What's going on, everybody? How's it going tonight? Thanks again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday Live podcast. Man, I'm going to tell you what, me and this guy, we've been talking back and forth now for the better part of, I think, a couple of years, maybe a little bit more. And one thing I truly enjoy is sitting down with somebody who's on a very, very similar wavelength to me, who is also solution based. You guys have heard me talk about ad nauseum how it seems like in this community, a lot of people just want to bitch about the problems instead of working on solutions to actually kind of curtail these issues. I mean, we're all very aware of what the problems are. You know what I mean? We've seen this, we've been showcased, and we've been shown this on like so many levels at this point. So I think it's time we start kind of gearing ourselves towards solutions. And we're going to be breaking down some of these solutions tonight, as well as talking about how to narrow the divide in this community, possibly even potentially narrow the divide in this collective. And I got to tell you what, I was hooked when I first heard the name of his podcast because I am all about heavyweights and light feels. So, guys, I am going to bring to the stage Andrew Lauridsen of Heavyweights Life Feels. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's good? What's good? Thank you very much for having me. I just want to start this off by saying this is the first time we've like interacted at this capacity, but for the longest time I've known you and I are like soul brothers. I don't know if you believe in reincarnation. I'm super curious to hear about it, but I feel like we've fought in battles past, like past lives, as crazy as that sounds. And so I'm really honored and excited that you're sharing this space and this platform with me. Um, I guess I do kind of run I don't call it a podcast. I just make random videos, sharing my thoughts on things because I think conversation is how we bridge the divide. But we're not doing very good at it. I've got some notes we can get into, but I watched a recent video of yours, your diatribe that you made, kind of calling out the community. And they really are doing a great job at dividing us. Even though we all know that's what they're doing, they're still succeeding. And it just blows my mind. And so, like you had said, hopefully we can discuss some solutions and then also seek some solidarity. I had heard you use that word, and it's really funny because it's on the back of my shirt here. I'm making some shirts
Very
to
cool.
kind of raise awareness to it, but that's a loaded word. That's a leftist word. You've also used the word comrade, so I'm curious. What version of anarchist are you? Because you sound like a leftist anarchist.
I am actually, so believe it or not, I am just a black flag. I don't really claim anarcho-capitalism because I just have a issue with privatizing police forces and privatizing things that where I come from on it is a human psychology. I deal with a lot of human psychology. I know the human psychology very well. I've been understanding the human condition. And that's the reason why, for a while I entertained anarcho capitalism, but I just at least in my eyes, having certain things privatized in that manner, it leaves too much open ended things that could occur. One thing I wanted to touch base with you on as well, my friend, is also I do feel that that we do have a lot. Like I said, man, the name of your show is what definitely hooked me because I'm all about heavyweights and light feels. You know what I mean? I'm an avid lifter. I've been lifting for quite some time, and I am on this spiritual evolution that we've been undergoing. And I know comrade and can be mistaken definitely for that, but I just really see us all in this community. Maybe I should sort of start to change that a little bit. I can't expect people to follow the same code of conduct that I do, as much as I would, like to think that, I would like to think people might follow this similar code of conduct, but I do see us all as kind of brothers and sisters in arms.
So I'll actually be honest and admit I don't fully know what a black flag anarchist is. So I have two questions I want to ask, and it's like, shoot, what is a black flag anarchist? But then also, this concept of community. What community are we in? I've heard different names and different terms, and I think there might be different communities, like the conscious community. That was the initial sort of community that drew me in. I was like, okay, the conscious community, I like that. But then there's also like, what else? The truther community, and I think there's definitely overlaps and parallels. Um, so what community, are we in, or what community could we maybe focus on building that is, and I'm using this word unironically, god damn it, but that is inclusive. Fudge,
I know,
what
we're catching it's funny because like I think people like you and I, we see the objectivity behind this stuff. We're not tying it to any kind of particular narrative. We're not tying it to any kind of direction. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, basically what a black flag anarchist is in my eyes is somebody who just is a stone cold anarchist. I believe in decentralization. I am for a voluntary society. I know we're not morally, ethically, and I guess you could say, I'll say at least at this point, psychologically sound enough as a collective to be doing that. But that would be, in my eyes, an ideal way of life and an ideal way of being. And I think a lot, like I said, I was saying before, you and I kind of see the objective version of this. So the community, I would call it, I guess, if you're asking me this question, is I like conscious community. I think there's a lot of intermingling between the communities. I mean, I would call myself, I guess, a very profound member of the spiritual community and the conscious community, but we see like this intermingling. We see the truther community, the conspiracy community kind of like intermingle with us as well. And, we do see a lot of it's funny now that a lot of the conservative right has really kind of dived into this community as well. And it's interesting. I don't know if I could really portray a label for it. I do like conscious community, but at the same time, I think we see a lot of different people at different tiers. There's a lot of people who are still really, I guess you could say, engrossed in the geopolitical climate. That's at least in my eyes, it's a very thin layer of icing on a much larger cake to what's really and truly going on here at this point in time. And then we have people who kind of just have worked their way down through this cake. And I don't know if I'm at the bottom of the cake yet. I can't exactly say I am at the dish. I don't know. You know what I mean? Who am I to say that I've reached the bottom of the cake? But the one thing I can say is I'm very deep in the cake. I'm very deep in the cake. So that's really what it is, man. I mean, anarchism is a prime principle belief in people. We have to have faith in people. Okay. As much as we're told and we're conditioned to think other people are just horrendous and bad, I do still deep down inside think that people are good natured inherently to at least some degree. It's the conditioning that's been placed upon them that has made them think following orders is good natured, that makes them think that listening to what a politician dictates is good or evil is what makes them good natured. And I'm a huge believer that a moral compass should exist outside of any kind of establishment or any kind of dogma. A moral compass should be something that's innate to us. I mean, we know that killing somebody's bad. We know that stealing from people are bad. Andrew, I think I lost you there. Are you still there? I think your camera went out.
I'm still here. Let me check on my camera though. Keep talking.
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. And But yeah, no, that's my definition, man. I think a lot of other people follow that as well. I know it has spread off into many sects of anarchism. I know there's a lot of different sects of anarchism. I have a sticker actually hanging around somewhere with all of them. Hopefully, I can dig it up and send it to you. But yeah, man, that's pretty much my take on it.
So my camera, I don't know much about camera stuff. I have the wrong camera for this setup. I might have to keep doing that every half hour.
No, you're all good,
But
man.
I agree with pretty much all of that. And at this point, maybe I don't want to get bogged down in, discussing how we would have a public police force in an anarchist society. I think we're very much on the same page. I want to maybe kind of go to something that I think about almost nonstop. There's a quote by an old philosopher by the name of Seneca. It goes something to the you've heard it's something to the effect of, just because you do not care about politics, it does not mean that politics does not care about you. And so you had mentioned kind of the icing on the cake in the whole political sphere, political ecosystem that we're currently participating in. And it's a really, really, I think that's a huge driving source of the division, the culture
Absolutely.
wars. And there's a level above what I'm about to get to, but I can't detail that level, which is bad for credibility. But I believe the simplest way of stating this is that global tyrants are attempting to consolidate the world's resources, and they're using collective ideologies and sentiments to do so. And from there, we can totally unpack specifics, or try to unpack specifics. And so that's the biggest thing I think about. And it seems like you agree, and a lot of people agree. And this kind of circles back to the beginning where we're talking about, we know they're dividing us and they're still succeeding, which is frustrating. And so it would be really cool to have continuous conversations around solutions. One solution is divestiture from the system and from the paradigm. But I don't think we're going to get out without real fighting. That's just my sort of belief. I'm curious though, where, like,
So why
how
do
do
you,
you,
if you don't mind me asking, why do you think we're not going to get out without any real fighting? I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, the simple answer is history, and that history is rife with communist violence. And so, yes, I just used the word that immediately some people, you say that word and people are like, oh, you're being crazy. But there is a communist element to this. It is not definitionally communist. This is where it wraps into the collective ideologies and sentiments they use. It's not actually communism, but the roots of these people's efforts is in communism. That's what I believe, or Marxism, or fascism. There to me, there is very little difference between communism and fascism. One uses sunshine and rainbows to sort of get people to buy in, and then the other uses nationalism and patriotism. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
They're both tyrannical collective ideologies. And so I don't think we're going to get out without violence just because of history. It would be nice if we could get out without violence, but I don't know. But then it also kind of gets back to, what does victory look like in 20, 30, 40 years? Because I don't think total eradication of the tyrants is possible. One can dream, and I'm not saying that like relishing the thought of exterminating people. These are all bad words to use, but we're talking about people like evil people. And so what does victory even look like for us? And I think you and I were ahead of the pack in a lot of ways. And I once had a boss. Thank you for letting me just rant. I love that we can go back.
No worries,
and forth
man.
with this
Yeah.
kind of rant.
This episode is about you, my friend. Keep on going.
Uh, you know, I had a boss a long time ago tell me, Andrew, you are clearly just ahead of the pack. And instead of looking back and yelling at everyone to hurry up and come along, you're going to have to develop patience and learn to bring people along. And you and I, as anarchist thought leaders or whatever we are, that's what we need to do is bring people along. And to me, victory 20, 30, 40 years from now is an entirely parallel system or way of being that exists, coexists. And I just want to shout out one person real quick, Karen Holton. I love Karen.
Karen's
I just
awesome.
I love listening to her. Um, you know, I've heard her talk about the new earth kind of. I'm really, really compelled by that. And I think my conception of how all of this plays out is that the new earth coexists with the old earth in the same
Exactly.
physical plane, but it's what
Exactly.
you put your energy into and what you cultivate.
Oh, I'd 100% agree with you, man. I do feel that it's like, just as you put it, it's a state of being. It's walking into a new way of being, a new way of life. And I would actually wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. I do think that in, let's say 30, 40, 50 years, what we're going to have is this coexistence. I do see that, as much as I hate to say it, there is going to be, from what I'm seeing, at least some kind of a division in the population. We were going to have people like us who are ready to walk into this new way of being and to live this way and to continue moving forward this way. And then there are going to be other humans, other people who want to subject themselves to the 15-minute smart cities, who are okay with what's going on as far as this goes. Keep going though. No, I'm in total agreement with you for sure.
No, you should have kept going. I was just got excited because
Yeah.
the smart cities are exactly what I predict will be, 20, 30, 40 miles outside of sort of our anarchist zones. So the smart cities are going to be there. So it's not focusing on resisting the smart cities, but it's focusing on building spaces outside of them, which I have these notes. I have multiple notes everywhere. Some of my notes include, I think a big thing that drives us is the manipulation of resources.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and there are so many of us in this community that don't have resources, and we're still playing like we don't know how to escape the matrix, because to at least escape the matrix, like, you need land.
Mhm.
So, land is like the most important thing I think people should be trying to buy right now. Without a doubt, not Bitcoin, not gold, nothing. Just buy land, 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 land.
I would
But
agree
then
with
we
you on
also,
that.
need to really learn to collaborate. I don't see. So I'm a lurker. I call myself a lurker. I don't do a lot of shows and stuff because I'm nobody. Like, and I acknowledge that, and I'm okay with that. And I think we need more nobodies doing
Mhm.
something, and that's how we make progress. And so, my dream in life is to become what I call like a community man. Like, I just want to be somebody who goes out about my community, and if there's a problem, I want to somehow be able to contribute to its solution. So, like, if there's a fence that's down and maybe it's an older couple that can't repair the fence, I want to go help repair the fence. Maybe their cattle get out, and so we help wrangle the cattle. To me, that's like the most fame I want. A community of like maybe 10,000 people at most. Um, but anyways, okay, I do
No,
this
no, no.
sometimes.
I
I
agree with you, man.
ramble.
No, 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 dude. You're all good, man. I'm really enjoying this because, no, I'm the same way. And I've come to accept that, that I am nobody as well. And same thing, man. And that's why I do enjoy, what I do as a service electrician. I go out and I'm, helping people in my community. I'm checking on their power, making sure it's good, and making sure they have their comforts and they're able to survive. And the whole scarcity thing, the scarcity lie of resources. I mean, this has just been put into effect, I think, in just to keep the human collective in what I call a survival frequency. and to keep people just fighting over crumbs while the establishment or these tyrants run away with the whole box of cookies. And that is a dream, man. And I do think that's where both you and I are going to end up eventually, is we are going to be community men. We are going to be offering service and help to our communities. And I think this is one thing, both you and I sitting here is kind of showcasing that we have two nobodies who are actually doing something. We're sitting down and we're having these conversations, and I've already come to the acceptance, and I actually love this, and I remember I made a post not too long ago about how I'm done trying to get big guests. And, I am putting it down for now because I've seen this podcast help kind of heal people. And that's kind of really where, I'm starting to see it's special in that aspect that, I've made people's days. I've allowed people to come on and tell their stories. They've never had an outlet necessarily maybe to showcase their stories. And I love it when I see after I have somebody on and they're like, dude, like I feel so much better since I've been able to come on your show and I was able to speak my piece and speak my truth. And I think that's what it's about, man. And I like that you and I are sitting here because we can show people that they can do this. I know there's a lot of people in our community who feel that they possibly could not do something like this, or they're not good enough to do something like this. But on the contrary, man, like I tell people, I'm an electrician by day, podcaster by night. Like this is you can do it, and then I think both you and I are kind of setting an example. And like you said, what you were saying with your old boss, like you have to learn how to bring people in. You can't sit there and you can't just yell at them, until get them to come with you. Like you have to. I always, you've heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And but if there was a way to show the horse how awesome that water is, and how tasty that water is, and how refreshing that water is, that to me is being the example. And when people see somebody like you or I, living their best life in joy, abundance, and maybe not having much at all. I don't really have much. I'm grateful for my home, my wife, my two dogs, those things. And that to me is abundance, to have that family, to have this house, where I can lay my head at night and be comfortable and enjoy, time with my family and things like that, man. So I think we're doing the right thing here, man. 100%. And this is where it all begins.
I totally agree with you. For the record, this is not my house. This is not my view. I'm just dog sitting, so I'm not that blessed yet. But I'm working on it. I want to be someday. I was going to say something. Oh, you were talking about us modeling certain behaviors. I've been thinking about this concept of the 4-minute mile. How for the longest time, the 4-minute mile, nobody could run faster than that. And then all of a sudden, one person does it. And then after that, a whole bunch of other people were able to do it. There's almost like a social barrier to people even knowing something's an option. And I had used this word earlier. We'll circle back a little bit to solutions. Yeah. I have ADD or whatever. I might also be on the spectrum. I don't know. Solutions, divestiture. What is divestiture? That means taking your resources, your time, your energy, your money out of the matrix or the current paradigm. I think you call it the consensual reality, but I imagine they're very similar. And maybe I can have you expand on the consensual reality in a minute. But
for sure.
It's as easy as paying someone cash for work. It's as easy as not even using cash. Bartering, that's another thing. Going back to bartering, not involving parties that need to be involved. I think no, I'll stop rambling there, and I'll ask, what is the consensual reality? I've heard you use that, and I'm curious.
So I borrowed that term from Chris Matthew. I to me, like, I've used matrix before. Honestly, I think that term has kind of, at least for me, fallen to the wayside. I now have been kind of calling it Maya, the veil of illusion. That's kind of really, at least in my eyes, would be the best term. But as far as the consensual reality goes, I guess my definition of that would be the mainstream reality that most of the collective is partaking in still, still buying into the two-party illusionary system, still getting all hyped up about bread and circuses, having a favorite Hollywood actor that you like to listen to them preach to you about helping the world and changing the climate while they fly to climate conferences in their private jets. It's or having a favorite influencer or something like that. I mean, that would be the consensual reality. I mean, we look at everything that is mainstream, that is, at least in my eyes, devoid of any spiritual concept or devoid of any spiritual nature that truly exists in this world. And that is, and essentially, Maya, the veil of illusion. And it is, at least in some eyes, I mean, based on, even from what I've seen in my research and what I've done, I mean, to see that a lot of this, a lot of our mainstream reality, if not all of it, is scripted, manufactured, to keep people caught up in it, to keep people divided amongst themselves. So, in my eyes, I mean, Maya would be the best term for what I would call, or if some people want to call it, the matrix reality, if that term suits them best. I just think Andrew Tate killed that, for everybody. No hate on Andrew Tate or anything, but I just think he used the term way too much, to the point where it, like, killed it dead. At least in my opinion.
No, I agree. I agree, and just a little bit of hate to Andrew Tate from me, at least. But I don't want to start beef with him, so never mind.
Oh man,
You
I would not be surprised if he's got to be. He definitely watches things. I mean, I'm streaming to X right now. Who knows? But do I agree with his message? Not 100%. We'll just put it that way.
and so he's definitely one of those influencers you just mentioned. But then I wrote some notes here, because something I wanted to talk to you with is handlers and people in the media. And then I also wrote a little note: disillusionment. I'm curious if you've also experienced over the last 20 years this sort of loss of, like, oh my gosh, I used to love this person, and now is this person complicit? How complicit is this person? The perfect example, Joe Rogan. Oh my gosh. He is the perfect example, because 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I loved that guy. The Fear Factor guy was the fucking shit. And now, how authentic is he still? I might agree with him on some things, but then again, divestiture, we need to, like, get away from these people. But then at the same time, you and I are perpetuating the problem by, you know, uh, putting out X things and still being on Instagram. So we're also influencers, even though we're nobody influencers. But
I love that, by the way.
the key, nobody influencers, that should be a band name. So have you also been disillusioned by the fact that you've realized a lot of your celebrity people you used to like have been handled? And then, like, well, I won't ask that question yet, so we'll stop there. Have you been disillusioned? Have you gone through that whole process?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. As much as I'm sure you have as well, during this whole process, I have been, even in the beginning stages of my spiritual evolution. Like, I don't like talking about it too often. I'm not using it as a flex, everybody, okay? Like, so don't take it that way. I'm using it as a point of reference at this time. I started this back in 2008. I was a very young 20-year-old. I'll even say kid still. Like, I really, did not know my head from my ass compared to me being now almost 37. But this is when it all started. I mean, it felt like I was called to it. And, throughout the years, I've had some pretty heavy doses of disillusionment. One of the biggest ones, And you might resonate with this story a little bit, Andrew. I think you'll like what I'm about to say. So I used to, for a little bit of time, I used to teach sacred geometry and occult studies at this holistic center on the East Coast, which is where I'm originally from, called Rising Phoenix Holistic Center. And at the time, she is no longer the owner there. There was this owner, Tracy, and her and I just consistently butted heads. So in one of my classes, I used the word revolution, but I used the word that there needs to be a revolution within us, that we have to have this revolution of our consciousness, our minds, our hearts, our actions, when we're trying to cultivate a reality that we want to step in a new way of being, or a new earth. And I remember her kind of pulling me aside. I don't want you using that word. It sparks too many bad emotions in people, the word revolution. And I thought that was kind of strange, because like, she heard the context I used it in. I wasn't saying, oh, it's going to be a bloody revolution. We're all going to fucking kill each other, and it's just going to be bodies everywhere. I was not saying that, but there's a few other instances. But I remember I walked in into one of her classes because I was getting ready for mine. And she was basically teaching this group of women to, instead of use their manifestation for spiritual sustenance, and potentially what I would say material necessities, you know what I mean? And what I would call, so one of the things I've talked about, and you've probably heard me use matrix in this, I call it bare minimum participation in the matrix. And you kind of talked about it just a little bit too. And what I mean by bare minimum participation in that is, of course, go out, provide for your family, make yourself comfortable in your temporary human ride that you're here for, in this earthly plane of existence. Of course, I'm not faulting on that by any means. And of course, do something good here, just like you and I are doing right now. We're doing something good here, and leave something behind that's going to make this world a better place. But that doesn't mean you go and choose a political party. That doesn't mean you choose a favorite sports team and get involved in the bread and circuses. That doesn't mean you pick a favorite Hollywood actor. That doesn't mean you pick a favorite sitcom. So basically, you kind of said it well, like when you're talking about not giving our focus or attention or our dollars to these individuals that are perpetuating this, or this Maya or this matrix reality, and to withhold that and put it towards the things, your energy and your focus towards the things you wish to see to come to fruition. And that's kind of what I'm saying as well. So, I mean, I'll digress back to what I was saying though, but I walked into her class and she was teaching these females how to manifest BMWs into their lives, and coach purses and things like that. Oh yeah. Oh no, dude. I was like, even dude, I was only about, so when was this? This was back in, this had to have been like 2013, 2014. I was very still young on my spiritual evolution at this point in time. And I knew that was wrong. I was like, this is not the point of this. And I remember there was a couple more headbutts there, and then she ended up pulling me into her office and letting me go from teaching at the holistic center. And I remember I was kind of like, I was not surprised, but I was surprised at the same time, and it was like, okay. I said, so Tracy, I was like, tell me how telling women and teaching women how to manifest BMWs and coach purses into their lives is spiritually sound in any way, shape, or form. I think in any way, shape, or form, you're teaching these women to manifest materialism into their hearts, into their minds. And I remember like she got real mad at me because she knew exactly what I was talking about. And that was a dead giveaway, about what was happening there. And she goes, everybody's methods are different, Stephen. And I looked at her and I said, well, I guess my methods and your methods don't agree anymore. I guess we can just leave it at that. But that was the first taste of disillusionment, man. That was the first taste. I was like, okay, not everybody in the spiritual community is doing the right thing. so that was the first taste of it. And then it even magnified from there, man. And now I'm at a point where, I think I've seen enough to know that if they are in the mainstream and they claim to be on our side, or they claim to talk about, or they do talk about these subjects that are of interest to us, like other dimensions, the spiritual nature of life, extraterrestrials, DMT, kind of hitting on Joe Rogan there a little bit, and all that they're in on it 100%. I've seen that, the CIA and the DOD basically have their hands in and manipulate anything that becomes mainstream. And you are not becoming mainstream unless the CIA and the DOD want you to be. So that's just kind of, where I'm at that point of disillusionment, at least in my eyes. I'm curious to hear about yours as well, man. There was a lot of people who I used to look up to, who I used to, in fact, people I've had on this podcast, like in the very beginning. I'm not going to name names, but he's the Sun Weatherman. I used to really look up to him, and but the route he's taken, with him trying to loop people back into the bipartisan system, trying to incite riots and violence and all kinds of different things amongst his following group and all that. Yeah, man. It's been a real heavy dose of disillusionment, but I'm curious to hear about your story as well with it.
Oh boy, I was just gonna maybe load another question for you, but I'll try to also tell you my story. Um, mine's very similar to yours. I don't think my awakening journey is. I'm way younger than you are, I guess you could say. I'll say mine started around 2016, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I had really been, as a person, like almost hyper compartmentalized within my analytical side, like to the point
Mm-hmm.
where I almost shut my intuitive side out. And it wasn't until an experience with psilocybin where I finally was able to acknowledge that I have this whole other side of me. And then the last 8 years or so have just been learning about this other side, and then learning to integrate the two sides, because I'm a hyper analytical person, but I'm also a very empathic person, and so it's a deadly combination, because and then so I mentioned I might be on the spectrum. This is a new sort of thought for me, but I I wrote something down here for you. You'll
Mm-hmm.
probably relate. I'm constantly taking in information, whether I
Mm-hmm.
want to or not. And it's through all my senses and maybe other senses I don't even know of. The term downloads, oh my gosh. When I finally realized what downloads were, I was like, okay, this is fucking cool. But how do you explain this shit to people? When you take in this deep, like almost esoteric and occult knowledge, you have a big background in that, I believe, and so I'm curious to hear you talk about maybe the nature of reality at like a fundamental level. You know, is material reality even real, or it's all vibrations and all that other stuff, right? But how do you explain to people something because the universe downloaded it into you? How do you explain people to that? You can't. You're just a crazy person, but there's so much in my head that I cannot take credit for. And that's why I always give like things I say, sort of a degree of confidence, like a confidence interval, because at the same time, it's like projections of the future, not just you know uh, data right now, but it's like data projected out into the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely think reincarnation is real. There's a really cool branch of cosmology. I think it's like concentric conformal cosmology that essentially suggests the universe uh, expands, and then at some point somehow like recollapses into itself and then starts again, and it just continues to do that. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That gives merit to this concept of reincarnation. But then there's a lot of questions around where does the data go at each iterative stage, right? So if the data completely disappears, there would be no way for us to have knowledge of our past lives. But who knows? Because there are times just curious. I in these downloads, there's also like historical things. Like I get flashes of historical, I don't want to say events, but like historical sensations. That's what I'll call them. And so it kind of loops into the revolution concept. I have this drive for or this it's a drive to participate in the revolution. Um
Mhm.
I think I just lost my camera. I'm still here though. Let me click that real quick.
Nah, you're all good, man. I like where you're going with this, though. I'm going to give you my best answer.
Okay. Let's see if that brings me back. Start cam. Burp, 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 burp. I'll just kind of get back. Man, I was in the zone. This drive for revolution,
Mhm.
I think about the founding fathers, and they definitely were not, uh, by our standards, maybe good men, but that's something I think we're guilty of when analyzing these historical figures, and then also maybe these current sort of famous figures, is we're projecting our own morals and virtues onto people who had problems and considerations beyond what we could fathom. And so I try to, yes, judge them from like a baseline virtue point of view, but then also from a point of view of, um, I like psychohistory, so like the history of psychology, but through the lens of like anthropology. So how
Mhm.
humans develop psychologically throughout history, and it's fucking fascinating. Um, Lots of trauma. Um, Maybe we can go down that, but we got really. Let me try to wrap. I can wrap it all up. I get downloads. I can't explain how I know a lot of things. You have a lot of esoteric knowledge. Um, I think there's a revolution that we're contributing to, whether what our roles look like or not. I don't know. But then truth. So, like, the truth and the nature of reality to me are intertwined, and I just cannot. Uh, uh, I don't know if I can reconcile. I cannot reconcile the two because without like a factual or objective knowledge of the basis of reality, how can you have an objective truth, right? But yet there
Mhm.
has to be objective truth. Do you want to just maybe take over? I'm rambling.
So no, dude, you're all good. So the first thing I'm going to say is the first thing that comes to mind. Have you seen the Giga Chad memes where it's like, "What's your source?" and it's like, "I am the source." that's
Yes.
exactly
Or
that's
like
exactly
source is the source.
I'm the source of the source. But no, man. So this is I'm just gonna give it to you straight up as far as explaining the download. So this is something you could try to use if you're trying to explain to somebody. So I don't know if I've spoken with you about this before, or you've heard me speak about this before, but it's not necessarily new. It's been around for, I guess, a little over a decade at this point, but it is the most hated theory in quantum physics right now. And this theory is called panpsychism. So, what panpsychism is a theory that consciousness itself is the prime fundamental driver of this existence. And then you have the implicate and the explicate model. So the implicate is the observer of the within, the observer of the what is perceived to be physical existence, and the explicate is the physical existence itself. And this is the most hated theory in quantum physics for quite a few reasons, even though there's a lot of evidence that's starting to really point towards this. And yes, panpsychism would be a scientific theory that lines up with a lot of esoteric and occult knowledge. And that's would be one reason why it is one of the most hated theories in quantum physics, because now we've breached the gap between spirituality and science. We have a actual theory that could sit in the center and help these two things cohabitate amongst each other. And this is something that's a very threatening thing to the tyrants. And that also being because if you take panpsychism into account, what you have is that takes our existence here as human beings. The consensual narrative, or the Maya narrative, as we'll call it, thinks that, oh, our existence is coincidence. It's just by chance. And what panpsychism would do is take our existence from just being coincidence or by chance into making it absolutely necessary. Now, that is a flip of the script when you're trying to, demoralize and dehumanize a collective who you want to just think we're on this little blue rock floating through this abyss. Our existence is in a lot of ways meaningless, or we just evolved from a bunch of dumb apes, or a bunch of chimpanzees or rhesus monkeys or whatever. We just evolved from that. But what this now does is now it makes us necessary. We have to be here. Our existence is important here. And so that's the other thing too. And the other thing that you were kind of going off on and bringing to light here was objectivity. What this does is it destroys objectivity of reality. But there is objectivity still. I'll get to that. But what this does is, instead of having an objective reality, what we have at this point is a collective of subjective realities that agree upon a mutually shared hallucination or illusion of reality. And so this is essentially what this theory lines us up into. But the objectivity behind this theory, the implicate would be the observer. This would be the objective truth in this model. So one thing I would say, if you're trying to explain these downloads to people, is to show them panpsychism. Show that there is this sign, because that's what a lot of people reach for. There's a lot of people who want to find a tangible way to digest what exactly you are trying to say to them and what you're trying to showcase to them. And so by showing them this scientific theory that kind of relates to and is kind of that, what I would say, that centerpiece that joins this esoteric and occult knowledge and the scientific community, it joins them as opposed to deviate them. That's why if there's one person I want to go back in time and just kind of slap around a little bit, it's Descartes, because Descartes was the one who decided to be like, the soul and matter are separate. They must be looked at separately. And that is well, basically the what took commonplace after that. But that's why that's one person I would go back in time and just be like, listen, dude, I see the Beavis and Butthead meme. Can you shut up? And just like that's just kind of like where but I'll digress. But so that's something I would showcase to people, when you're trying to be like, well, if consciousness is a prime fundamental of reality, as this scientific theory is saying, that means that we can download information through it. We can receive information through it. And we can get internal information that we can't describe. So another thing you kind of brought up too, I have a saying, words fall short when we're trying to really describe what's going on here. The esoteric and the occult, that's why I say symbolism is the prime language of this reality. And the reason why I say that is, you've had psilocybin experiences, you've had psychedelic experiences. The symbols and the archetypes that were showcased to you during these experiences were a language of their own. They were telling you information. They were delivering and downloading this information to you. And that's why I say symbolism is the prime language, because if you take two different people from two different walks of life, don't understand each other, from two different countries, and you show them a common symbol, they're going to understand it. And this is why I do say that is the case. So when it comes to a lot of this knowledge, yes, you're going to find that words are very flat when you're trying to break this stuff down in a literal degree. And in that sense, you try your best. honestly, there's experiences I have had on DMT that, you know, I when I come back, like I'm like, how the fuck do I tell people fuck I just experienced? Like how? And like you do your best. And you know, and one thing you'll come to find when trying to explain this information to people is as you grow in your spiritual evolution and as your perspective changes, you will be able to find the words, you will be able to find things. You know, that's why I've always called it the spiritual spiral. I don't call it the spiritual path because it's not in a straight line. You might get brought back to something. Like a good example is this, like there's books that I'm brought back to. Like every like, you know, 2 to 3 years, there's these books, and it's like, you know, I'm brought back to them. And I always take something new away from them. And it's because I've grown, and it's because my perspective has changed. And even there have been times where even some aspects of my belief structure have changed. So, you know, that would be a really good way to kind of grasp somewhat of an understanding. I like to call it an understanding. When it comes to a lot of this esoteric and occult knowledge. As far as reality being material, I do think that our reality is very internally driven. I do think that I even drew kind of like a diagram for people. So let's say you had never seen a chair or anything like that in your life. Let's take a common object. Let's say you've never seen a chair, but the human collective has seen a chair and you have not seen one. That is going to render in your reality as a chair because we're sharing this human collective consciousness with other human beings, that we're all these subjective focal points of this, at least in my eyes, greater divine consciousness. And we will render that information from that aspect. And that's why we will still see a chair. We might not know what to call it. You know, we might not know the name for it, but we will see it as the mutually agreed upon collective illusion that we've all are undergoing at this point in time. Now, the caveat is, this is a good question. Let's say none of the human collective has seen a chair or knows what a chair is. So at that point, all right, like what's it going to render as? Is it going to render as something that, you know, something different, or is it going to render in a completely different way? I mean, we see this correlation between consciousness and reality. We see it on multiple levels. I mean, even if we're kind of going down into, you know, just even basic quantum physics, you know, with the wave function and the double slit experiment, things like that. Reality is not doing what you want it to until you look at it. So we have some kind of observer dependency when it comes to what we're experiencing here. And you know, that's kind of my answer on that for you, man, is that, you know, in a lot of ways you're never going to, I'm not going to say never, you know, because I am, you know, still just even though I've been on this for a little, I'm still just a baby in this, dude. Like I mean, that's the reality of the fact. I might be able to find a way to explain to people better as I travel on my spiral a little bit longer, you know, or vice versa. But, you know, show them something that's tangible, and panpsychism is something that's tangible. And that's what a lot of the human collective reaches for, is they want something that's tangible. They want something that's understandable. They want something they can compartmentalize. They want something, you know, that they can label, that they can see. And I think since panpsychism is starting to kind of surface in the scientific community, albeit it is very hated, you know, and one of the funniest things you'll probably laugh at is one of the counter arguments to it is, how does the consciousness clump together to form larger consciousness. This is one of the counter arguments to panpsychism. But that's really what I would say, man, is to show some these people you're trying to explain to you something that's tangible. Understand that words, language that we speak, that we write, is very limited in its capacity to deliver the depths of esoteric information. You can try your best, and who knows, maybe in like 10 years we'll have this conversation again, man, and we'll have like a whole new vocabulary and we'll be able to explain this stuff, but that would be my best answer for you, man, is there is an objective truth. It is the implicate. As far as the reality itself, it's a mutually agreed upon illusion that we all collectively agree upon, that is here and that we are experiencing. And just keep on developing that understanding, man. That's really, really the best advice I can give you on that.
Thank you very much for all of that. That was really awesome to listen to, and I'm gonna have to watch this again to hear it again.
I will send you the replay definitely once it is done, for sure, man.
I just I got lost. You were so in the zone. I ended up thinking to myself, now take all of that and try to talk to a normie about that. And so it circles us back to our ultimate paradox as anarchists. What level or what role do we play in interacting with people who fundamentally disagree with us, who fundamentally are trying to control us, and who do not have any open-mindedness to any of our desire, our ways of being, our ways of knowing. Gosh, I'm using all kinds of leftist language. I think I don't want to be that guy, but I will be that guy for a minute. I think leftism has stolen a lot of our friends. That's another part of my journey. I'll touch on quick, is that over
I have
the
a
last
lot of friends who have become leftist. I agree.
And to me, it's additionally frustrating because 15 and 20 years ago, they were apathetic. So they went from apathetic to uninformed and brainwashed. And it hurts because you cannot have a conversation with these people anymore. We need to. I acknowledge that. And so that's part of what I'm working on trying to do, is to have conversations with people I disagree with, but they're so close-minded that they're always like, oh, you want a source? Or here's a good one. That's a right-wing source. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's the level of conversation these people are having right now. And so I think over time they'll come around. And so it's good that we have this opportunity to refine our language and our message, because I do believe, not in 10 years, but maybe in 5 years. I very much, I used this term earlier, and it's a term I've never used for myself, but I included myself in it. But, you're a thought leader, I think. In a lot of ways, we have to use their systems to dismantle their systems to an extent, I believe, if we have the ability. If someone has the ability to utilize a system to dismantle it, they should. And so I think if you continue what you're doing, you're going to get there. And so this is perfect practice. I love it. But so, yeah, my friends 15 to 20 years ago, they went from being apathetic and indifferent and telling me, Andrew, shut up. Nobody cares about politics. Literally, I was 16 years old and I fell in love with philosophy. And so I'm not one of those people who can recite off a whole bunch of names and dates and stuff, but I know a lot about random philosophies. That's the type of philosopher I aspire to be, is just whatever philosophy, I want to explore it, and because it's going to have value, not all of it, but some of it. And so my logo is the Tai Chi symbol, the yin and the yang, because the concept of the Tao is extremely extremely compelling to me. And you had mentioned, you go back to books that you read years ago, the Tao Te Ching, that book, literally, you can read it, 6 times in a year and you'll take something completely different from it each time.
Absolutely.
It's a fantastic text. But, kind of circle it back. We have a duty to interact with and conversate with the normies to mitigate the division. But we have to be really good with our message. I'll bring it up. You said I could bring it up if I wanted.
Absolutely.
I have a very small YouTube channel. It's not something I never dream of having it be large, but I love that I just have a space that I can unfiltered be myself. And along that journey, I've developed some haters. It's the weirdest energy. But there are these twin brothers, the Brothers Blue. I don't know what they believe because their entire foundation is just criticizing me and shitting on me. They are a perfect example of the type of people we have to win over. And I think, one of their biggest criticisms of me is the source thing. What's your source for this and what's your source for that? And maybe I'll bring up a controversial thing. I don't know if you have like time limits or whatnot.
So hour and 30 is kind of where I
Okay.
cap it off from here on out. Yeah, no, keep going, man. Because the one thing I definitely want to say, before we dive into this is, I resonate with you on that, man. Because even though we sat there and we talked about at the little beginning of the show some of the experiences I've had with certain people who listen to me and follow me, I do have haters myself, man. Because a lot of people in this community, whether we call it the spiritual community, the conscious community, we'll call it that way, and all of its intermingling little subsections of it. It seems all they want to do is just talk about the problems and bitch about them. And, I can't tell you how many different podcasts I've listened to where we're talking about the same issues over and over again. We're talking about new aspects of these same issues, which aren't necessarily new. They've been known for quite some time. And, they're just being resurfaced and rehashed as new. And it seems like a lot of people still in the conscious community want to just complain about the problems, scream into echo chambers, and argue with other members in the conscious community. And here comes me, somebody who's positively optimistic, trying to deliver some kind of solutions. And bro, would you not believe people don't like that? They do not like that. It's like it blows their mind that somebody can go, hey guys, like, look, maybe if we just start doing this a little bit and we start kind of, shifting our perspective towards this, and we kind of look at our neighbor and understand that, like, we might not agree eye to eye on everything, but really deep down inside, we both essentially want the same thing. Do we not? And dude, I can't tell you, it ruffles the feathers of so many people. Like, and that itself to me has been a mind-boggling experience, because here we are sitting in the midst of what I would say is a pretty big issue, a pretty big problem, like, and you would think you would want some kind of solution. You'd think you would want some kind of positive input. You'd think people would want that. But dude, people do not want that. At least not everybody. I know there are people who do want this and who do want solutions. But man, I can't tell you. I've had Jay Dyer block me. Okay, like I've had people. I know. Like I've for absolutely no reason that I can think of off the top of my head, I have enemies. Like, and I can't. It just blows my mind. And like, so I'm with you, man. Like, I think, what we've been conditioned as a collective is we have been conditioned to think everything is super complex, whether it comes to our health, whether it comes to politics, whether it comes to, solutions to a lot of the issues that we're facing, we have been conditioned as a collective to think they're complex. And, here comes, people like you and I, and we go, actually, these solutions are relatively simple. And what that does is it like, I don't know if it causes some kind of psychological thing in people, or I don't know what it is, but they're like, no, like it can't be that simple. And then you even kind of just touched on social barriers in the beginning just a little bit. And we'll kind of touch back on that, how you were talking about the 4-minute mile and how nobody could beat it. So same thing with the 1,000-pound deadlift. Like guy deadlifted 1,000 pounds. That was the benchmark for years. Then we had Eddie Hall come, and we had Hafthor Bjornsson come and just crush that one away. And now we're looking at like 502 and 503 kilogram deadlifts that are starting to like, you know what I mean? It's that social barrier. And there has been a conditioned social barrier within our collective that people think the solutions to these issues are just overtly complex. There has to be a massive degree of complexity to handle such a complex issue. But really, we see everything emerges from simplicity, Andrew. We see that simplicity is really the foundation of it all. So let's, and the fact that I've, caught in flack for that is alarming to me, to say the least. But continue, man. Yeah.
I don't want to name names, because like I also want to leave room for compassion when I make criticism. That's something, I need to be better at, leaving room for compassion while still making criticism. I think a lot of people in the conscious community, in the world in general, are just clinging to like what little they have right now. I think the scarcity mindset programming, they're doing fantastic right now. Which is hopefully something that, as an ancillary benefit to this show, hopefully we can make it a prime objective too. Like we need to break that barrier, because there is not a scarcity of resources. Look behind me. This is not my house, but there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of acres behind me, right? If you've ever been to Montana, like if you just there's so many resources. It gets back to the communists. I like saying it's the communists, because there's like there's a historical like precedent we can use, and they're following the formula in so many ways. So like really quickly, I got a big circle. I think we can put it all together. I make notes when you're talking, man. I love listening to you talk, because you trigger so many thoughts.
Ditto, man. Like you this is, to date on this show, has been one of the most thought-provoking conversations I've had. And we're definitely, man, we're, after the show tonight, we're going to talk about our coalition effort, because I think I want to pitch some ideas at you for sure. But no, continue. Let's get this circle going.
I love it. You didn't say the term, I don't think, but you definitely defined it. The brainwashing conditions people to experience extreme amounts of cognitive dissonance when they are presented with a counter narrative, and even evidence of said counter narrative. Here's like the easiest. I use this example all the time because it's so easy. It's so beautiful. The Brothers Blue that I had mentioned earlier, my haters, they think that the world we live in is a neoliberal environment. I don't believe it. I believe we're full-blown in authoritarian, whatever word you want to use, and they're just continuing to consolidate, right? I think we agree on that this is an authoritarian. Okay, so they're saying no, Andrew. They accused me earlier today in their video of being afraid of this boogeyman, this authoritarian boogeyman, which I think is very much a straw man, ad hominem sort of attack. I want to give an example of how America is not at all in the slightest a free market, because I myself, I identify as a free market capitalist or an anarcho-capitalist. I believe
a true capitalist.
I'm a true capitalist. I think anarcho-communists are retards. Can I say that word?
Go right ahead, man.
Okay. So insulin is the easiest example, because the left love to cry about insulin is so expensive, blah, blah, blah. Can you and I make insulin and sell it right now legally?
Absolutely not.
Not in a million years, right?
Not in a million years.
heavily regulated, heavily controlled. So how is that a free market? This is something that apparently a lot of people need, and yet it's heavily regulated and controlled. And it's not even that hard to make. I'm not saying it's easy to make. People, oh, the camera's up here. I'm looking at you, but I'm not an audio person. This is not like I love doing this. I need to get better because this is a lot of fun.
For sure, man.
So it's not easy to make. I'm not saying it's easy to make, but I envision a world where like your local community college is just synthesizing insulin as part of their curriculum, and then it's like, oh my gosh, we have insulin for the community. So you're learning, right? And then there would be a quality control element to it. But so in what world is a desperately needed, very easily synthesized product that is heavily regulated and controlled? How is this a free market, right? That's an easy example. Another thing I'm passionate about is the homelessness. Oh, I can fix this real quick. Okay.
Yeah, no worries, man. Go right ahead.
Okay. So the
one thing
homelessness.
I want to throw in there real quick too is the left and the right don't understand what real capitalism is, because we have something called, and I've beaten this horse dead, and I can't tell you how many people I've had to drop the definitions of capitalism and crony capitalism under their rant about capitalism and free market. And things like that. And I'm like, dude, we don't have real capitalism in the United States of America. Real capitalism died. A lot of people would debate with me potentially earlier, but it really died when corporations became people. I mean, and I know aspects of it did die, possibly and potentially before that. But when you take a look at what true capitalism is and you put it next to crony capitalism, and you compare these two different types of capitalism, we'll say it, side by side, you can see that very in plain sight that the United States of America, has crony capitalism. It does not have true capitalism. I just wanted to throw that in there because I think you hit the nail on the fucking head. But continue. So we were talking about the homelessness issue.
Well, some people would just call that fascism as well, when the corporations and the government are working hand in hand together. There was homelessness, but then also maybe I wanted to circle back. Something I think about in terms of anarchism is intellectual property, and insulin is a good example. Things that I don't think you can own a molecule, or like, I don't think you can own so, okay, would you say something like insulin would qualify as intellectual property that would be protected?
So from what I remember, there is a U.S. code. There's a U.S. It's a federal statute, if I can remember, that prohibits any patenting of natural things. I don't remember the exact code. It was years ago where I was looking at it and reading it. Maybe that's something I need to dig up, but no, you cannot patent or truly, I guess you can make profit off it, but from a stance of patenting it and saying you own it and you are the sole proprietor of this and you are the sole profiteer of this, you can't do anything that's natural. Now, insulin, I would say, is natural in and of itself, but the Analog Act is their loophole around this. So what they can do is they can create analogs that are different, slightly different, maybe in a few aspects of their molecular structure. But however, they do the same thing, and we see a lot of this insulin that's available, for diabetics, type 1 and type 2, both alike, which are, and I guess you could say the technical sense, are analogs. They are hormone analogs. I mean, we look at even testosterone, right? The juice that us guys have, so yes, like, I mean, testosterone is prescribed and it is profited from, but there's no sole proprietor of testosterone, and there's no sole proprietor profiteer of testosterone. There are many different companies that make it, that as a medication for whatever TRT or anything like that. However, when you talk about its analogs or its derivatives, those you can patent, those you can be the sole proprietor and profiteer off of. So it's very interesting, that topic that you're talking about. I mean, insulin itself is a natural thing. I mean, we make it in our bodies. It comes from our pancreas. It helps shuttle nutrients either into to muscle cells for glycogen, or it is stored as fat. However, it's these different derivatives or these different analogs that do the same thing, is their loophole when it comes to that.
Motherfuckers. Because also I believe that they're poisoning the population, encouraging obesity and the reliance on insulin. So it's just this whole big loop of motherfuckers.
I would agree.
The housing epidemic. I don't know how bad it is where you're at, but I currently, so actually I live in my van.
Yeah.
But I camp out in like the Vancouver, Washington area, which is just north of Portland. But like Vancouver and Portland, it hurts. And I know I'm sounding like a wimp right now, but it hurts to drive by like a row of just tents and tarps and garbage. That's not a sign of a civilized society to me. And the housing market, for so many reasons, is hyper inflated. We have all the regulations around building, right? You can't just go build on your land. Do you know how many inspections? And you're an electrician, right? So you know all about it, right? On top of like the whole banking infrastructure, do you have thoughts on the reserve fractional banking system that we use? I think that's
yes, I
a
do.
big part of the. Oh yeah, let's hear some.
Yes, I do. That was one of the biggest things, Andrew, that, a young 20-year-old Steve back in 2008 had a real disillusionment and a coming to Jesus with. There were three things that kind of really pushed me on the path that I'm on. Understanding that, so I grew up on, my mom's side was Roman Catholic, my dad's was Greek Orthodox. So I grew up in the middle of the schism, smack dab in the middle of it. And, for a while I became agnostic. I did think, or I think that's a shitty term really to describe it. I'll say deist, if really we're going to kind of be technical about it. I did believe there was a divine. I did believe there was intelligent design to this existence we were in. But I think the religions had it wrong. I just was like, there's no way this is what it is. There's no way. Like, there has to be something else out there. And that's when I kind of came into, finding, Hermeticism, Taoism, Buddhism, Gnosticism, like all of these different, like esoteric, like, and different occult concepts of, the divine and the greater scope of reality that clicked within me. And then, my health and fitness journey played into that as well. That's when that began too, when I was 20 years old. And then the biggest thing was learning about our financial system. I remember it was the recession of 2008, and I'm young 20-year-old Steve. I'm like, I should learn how our financial system works. I'm an adult now, and why is it always so fucked up? Maybe there's a reason why. And then, coming to find that ever since the gold standard, I think there was some funny shit going on before that. Don't get me wrong, but we'll use the official thing for that. Ever since the gold standard was suspended, basically our money is created out of thin air and loaned to us at interest. I mean if you're a person of common sense, and you hear what I just said, that should immediately trigger some red flags as to, a lot of the issues we face on a financial basis here in this country. We're basically playing with monopoly money that the only value it has is the belief that it has value. And people will argue with me all day long. Oh, oil. No, the petrodollar and the dollar are two different things. They are. Okay. And fucking, and they say our technology backs our, but that's the thing. Like, what technology then backs the dollar? And I can't get a straight answer out of anybody who freaking who gives me that answer, or gives me that statement. And
Tax slaves is the direct,
exactly.
blunt answer. We're tax slaves. The value of the dollar is directly related to the fact that we'll have a big tax base, which gets into like a whole bunch of other things about like forcing. Yep. Nope. No, you just we're tax slaves. They want every man,
100%.
woman, and child in some way, shape, or form to be a tax slave. And you had mentioned this money is loaned to us with interest by private individuals. And
100%.
it is extraordinarily convoluted who these private individuals are, because nobody will be honest about it. They're so roundabout. They're like, is the Federal Reserve a private entity? Yes. Well, but they're shareholders, and then who are
Yes,
the
well, but it's always that. It's always yes, well, but it's a common statement.
I'm gonna leave it at that there. It's
with you,
just
man.
it's
It is.
it's absurd.
I mean, you have to. We have to be willing to understand and accept this, because like I have so many friends, man, who just invest in the dollar. I mean, I think you really hit it hard in the beginning, man, where you said land, invest in assets, invest in things that are actually physical and accrue some kind of value. I mean, dude, we've seen the stock market is rigged. I mean, we've seen this, and the fact that people are still investing their dollar, their monopoly money into the stock market, even after what they've seen. I'm just bringing up. There's been multiple different things, but the most recent one being the GameStop thing. The whole GameStop incident that happened just a few years back. I mean, you think that would be a red fucking flag that, hey, maybe we should stop investing our money in the stock market? But no, people are still doing it, man. And it's just, that's the biggest thing that, the biggest dose, I would say, of cognitive dissonance among the American people is when you explain to them, how the financial system works, they will find any excuse possible to defend it. And the same thing when it comes to who you were saying, who truly runs the money, how it's all convoluted and how it's there's no clear answer. We know the common names, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that. I think yeah.
And that's another thing why a lot of people avoid talking about this, because it might be seen as a dog whistle. But I think we need to talk about it, and it is deeper than maybe just some common names. And one of the themes, I'm looking at the time, I know we're approaching that hour and a half mark. So another theme, some themes I want to just throw out there: complicity and redemption. I think a lot of people experience cognitive dissonance because it means they have to acknowledge how they at times may have been complicit, and they don't necessarily like that. It's not good to acknowledge when you maybe have done something bad, right? So I think that's a huge driving force behind cognitive dissonance. But then redemption, I you know I love the conversation we had about the nature of reality, and I don't have any definitive answers, but I like the concept of Jesus. I've seen many depictions and conceptions of him, and I have my own personal conception that's built off a diversity of those. But I think that message of forgiveness is just so key. And I think it needs to be talked about more in conjunction with, as we divest and as we acknowledge how we've been complicit, we need to forgive ourselves and then extend that forgiveness to other people. That's the huge thing. The more you're able to be compassionate with yourself, the more you're able to extend it to others. And so if there is maybe a call to action for anyone who sees this, it would be to cultivate some self-compassion first, and then seek to extend that out into your community. um, Real quick, I want to throw some notes in here. I mentioned earlier, I watched your video, your recent video, your diatribe. I loved it. Like, I literally took notes on it. I love that you used the word ineffable. Just a good word. Awesome on that. And I found it really funny that you called out the Hodge twins, because earlier that day I had watched one of their videos, and I don't subscribe to them, but like I said, I lurk. So I consume so much different types of content, and I'd watched one of their videos, not a normal thing I do, but one of those brothers just came off so freaking closeted. Like, I was like, bro, dude, it's clear that you just want a dick in your ass. Just come out. It's okay. It's 2024. It's okay. But unfortunately, because they've like cornered themselves into that, like, ultra conservative space, he can't. But man, and I'm not saying that's true. Don't sue me for slander or libel. That's just the vibe I got. So I found that was like a synchronicity, and I'm glad that you laughed. Thank you.
Oh, of course, man. And what's funny is I used to watch them in the beginning back when they made lifting videos. They actually, in the beginning, they did lifting videos on YouTube. And, I used to think they were funny, when they were just trying to take your ass to Snap City or whatever the fuck they would say and things like that back then. Like, yeah, no, dude, I thought it was great. Like, I was like, these guys are not bad. I like watching them. And then I just saw, like, this is how, people get, they get spoken to and they get bought out, is just the radical shift and change. Like, it was almost instantaneous that they became the conservative twins and started doing this. But I appreciate you watching that. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
No, you're going to continue to grow, and you're going to continue to be a voice, and I'm hopeful that I can contribute and participate somehow.
Dude,
so thank you for sharing.
We're in this together, bro, and anything I can do, man, whether we got to sit down and have more conversations, and or if you want to have me on, I mean, dude, let's do it.
Yeah, we need to have a round two, for sure.
I would 100% agree, man. Well, so since we're kind of on the winding down of the episode, one thing I'm going to say, man, is this was a great time. I'm happy to actually get to sit with you face to face. I know it's just been, messages on either FB or IG or things like that. But it's been really cool, man, to sit down with you here face to face. And I would agree with your sentiments at the beginning of the show, man. We're soul brothers. We definitely are. Whether there's parallel existences, whether there's potentially like different, we're fractals of some kind of greater consciousness or some related consciousness of some kind. Whatever that may be, man. The one thing I will say, man, is yes, we definitely need to do a round two, and we will definitely be scheduling that soon. So Andrew, real quick before we hop off here and we sign off, tell everybody where they can listen to Heavyweights Life Feels.
Oh, if you feel so inclined, I make rambling videos on YouTube. I do have like a Rumble and stuff, but like I'm not trying to be a content creator. That space is honestly like a very, very raw, vulnerable space for me, where I go to weird places, but I want to show other people that they should go to their weird places. I'm a huge fan of, we didn't even touch on like anything Jungian, Carl Jung, and sort of analyzing your shadow self. And so that's a space where you'll see some of my shadow self, coming out and me exploring it. Heavyweights Light Feels on YouTube.
I dig it, man. And I did on both the bottom of the Rumble description and the YouTube video, I have your YouTube channel and I have your Instagram, so people know where to find you, man. And other than that, dude, I really want to say, yeah, it's been an honor. This has been a great convo. And I look forward to hitting a round two with you. After we sign off here, we'll discuss that real quick. And I gotta say, man, it's crazy. You know, we really are doing something here. We may, you know, there's at times where I'm like, I get frustrated, you know, and I'm like, sometimes I feel I'm yelling into an echo chamber. But just like I said, I've seen what I do here heal people, and that's currency enough for me. If I've helped change somebody for the better, if I've, you know, helped somebody, give them a voice to tell their story, to, you know, to be able to come on air and just vent, you know, if anything, just to make somebody feel better, and, you know, to bring that smile to someone's face, or to make someone's day. I can't tell you how excited my last guest was to, you know, Alex Freeman, to show his kids, and it just made his day that his kids could watch him on a podcast. And that, to me, that's good enough for me. You know what I mean? And I, you know, I get emotional when I say that, but it's true, dude. Like, it is. And, you know, same goes to you, man, and what you're doing. You know, we do need to visit our shadow selves and visit our weird side as much as possible. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, we have to do that. So, all right, everybody. I want to thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday Live podcast. No guests next week. As of now, that could be subject to change. Who knows? But if we don't have any guests, I will be talking about Maya, the Veil of Illusion, and we will be doing a whole episode on that, and the two types of Maya: the Maya of nature and the Maya of society. Other than that, guys, thanks again for joining me, Andrew. Thanks again for joining me out there, everyone. You all have a great night, and thanks again for joining us for another BG Cast Wednesday Live podcast. Take care.